Imagine waking up one morning to discover that the invisible hands shaping your paycheck, your home loan, the price of gas in your tank, and even the wars your country fights aren't elected leaders or market forces, but a small circle of families and institutions whose wealth and influence have quietly ruled America for over 150 years. What if the American dream was never fully yours to chase, but a carefully scripted game where the house always wins? Welcome to the untold story of America's financial elite. From the smoke-filled boardrooms of the Gilded Age to the glass towers of modern Wall Street, a handful of dynasties and their successors have engineered the rise of the world's greatest economic superpower while pulling strings that affected every corner of society. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's history, laced with power plays, ruthless ambition, secret meetings, and staggering fortunes that redefined what it means to control a nation. Today, as wealth inequality hits levels not seen since the robber barons, their legacy lives on in trillion-dollar asset managers and family offices that own slices of nearly everything. Buckle up. This is a story of titans who built America and the hidden costs we still pay. Let's travel back to the chaotic birth of industrial America in the mid-19th century. The United States was transforming from an agrarian society into a manufacturing powerhouse fueled by railroads, oil, steel, and an explosion of capital. Out of this frenzy emerged men like Cornelius Vanderbilt, the Commodore. Born poor, Vanderbilt built a shipping empire during the Gold Rush and Civil War era, then pivoted to railroads. He consolidated lines, cut costs brutally, and by his death in 1877 was worth around $100 million, equivalent to over $200 billion today. He wasn't shy about his methods. He famously said, "What do I care about the law? Ain't I got the power?" His tactics included stock watering, bribery of legislators, and crushing competitors through rate wars that starved smaller operators. Vanderbilt's story sets the template: innovation mixed with cutthroat monopoly building. But he wasn't alone. Andrew Carnegie rose from Scottish immigrant poverty to dominate steel. His Carnegie Steel Company used vertical integration controlling mines, railroads, and mills to slash prices and dominate the market. Carnegie preached the gospel of wealth, arguing the rich should philanthropy their way to legacy, yet his factories were hellholes with low wages, dangerous conditions, and violent strike-breaking. Most notoriously, the 1,892 Homestead Strike, where Pinkerton agents clashed with workers, leaving dead on both sides. Carnegie sold out to JP Morgan for $480 million in 1901, retiring as one of history's richest men while his workers struggled. Then there's John D. Rockefeller, the ultimate oil baron. Starting with a small refinery in Cleveland, he built Standard Oil through aggressive tactics, secret rebates from railroads, predatory pricing to bankrupt rivals, and forming trusts that centralized control. By the 1880s, Standard Oil refined over 90% of American oil. Rockefeller was a meticulous bookkeeper and devout Baptist who viewed his success as divine, yet critics painted him as a ruthless octopus strangling competition. His fortune peaked at nearly $1 billion. Billions today, adjusted, making him America's first billionaire. The 1911 Supreme Court breakup of Standard Oil into companies like Exxon and Chevron only multiplied the family's wealth. Rockefeller's philanthropy universities, medical research cemented a benevolent image, but the monopoly power lingers in energy markets. JPMorgan stands as the financier kingpin from a banking family. Morgan bailed out the U.S. government during the 1895 gold crisis and orchestrated the creation of U.S. Steel, the first billion-dollar corporation. In the Panic of 1907, when banks failed nationwide, Morgan personally locked bankers in his library until they agreed to a rescue package, acting as a one-man central bank. His influence was so vast that he shaped industries from electricity to railroads. Morgan's methods involved Morganization restructuring failing companies into efficient trusts under his control. He hated competition and loved stability through consolidation. These weren't isolated tycoons. They formed an interconnected web. Railroads needed Morgan's financing, oil needed Rockefeller's refining, steel fed it all. They lobbied government, influenced tariffs, and shaped policy. The term robber baron emerged from critics like muckrakers who saw feudal lords in top hats extracting tolls from the public. Yet defenders call them captains of industry who built infrastructure that propelled America to global dominance. The truth is messier. Unprecedented growth alongside exploitation, corruption, and inequality. The Gilded Age glittered for the few, while millions toiled in slums. The real pivot came with the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. After repeated panics, including 1,907 where Morgan saved the day, a secret meeting unfolded on Jekyll Island, Georgia in 1910. Senator Nelson Aldrich, Paul Warburg of Kuhn, Loeb, Frank Vanderlip of National City Bank, Rockefeller Linked, and Henry Davison from JPMorgan gathered under the guise of a duck hunt. They drafted what became the Aldrich Plan, evolving into the Federal Reserve Act, signed by President Woodrow Wilson on the 23rd of December, 1913. The Fed was designed as a decentralized system of regional banks with a central board to provide elastic currency and prevent panics. Proponents said it stabilized finance. Critics saw it as handing control of money to private bankers. Charles Lindbergh Sr. called it the Money Trust Plan. The Jekyll Island attendees represented the elite interests Morgan, Rockefeller, European banking ties. While not a full Rothschild takeover, myths exaggerate their direct U.S. role. The families influenced the architecture. The Fed's creation centralized power, allowing easier credit expansion that benefited big finance, but also set stages for future bubbles and the Great Depression. Post-WWI, the elites adapted. Rockefellers expanded into banking via Chase. Morgans financed Allied efforts in both world wars, profiting handsomely. The Great Depression hit hard, but survivors consolidated further. New Deal regulations curbed some excesses, yet dynasties endured through trusts and foundations that shielded wealth from taxes and preserved influence across generations. The Vanderbilts offer a cautionary contrast. Cornelius's heirs built opulent mansions like the Breakers in Newport, threw legendary balls, and intermarried with European aristocracy. But without strong trusts or reinvestment discipline, the fortune dissipated through extravagance, divorces, and bad management. By the 1970s, no Vanderbilt was a millionaire despite the original billions. Rockefellers, by contrast, used family offices, trusts, and diversified holdings to thrive into the 21st century, funding politics, conservation, and global institutions. Into the late 20th century, finance evolved. Wall Street boomed with deregulation. Figures like Michael Milken pioneered junk bonds and leveraged buyouts in the 1980s, creating new wealth but also scandals like Drexel Burnham, Lambert's collapse. Hedge funds, private equity, and derivatives exploded. Families like the Pritzkers, Waltons, Walmart, and Kochs rose alongside old money. Today, the torch passes to institutional giants. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, the Big Three, manage over $20 to $5 trillion in assets. They are top shareholders in nearly 90% of S&P 500 companies, voting on corporate governance, ESG policies, and strategy. BlackRock's Aladdin platform tracks risks across global markets. Critics argue this creates de facto control without traditional ownership accountability, influencing everything from CEO pay to climate agendas. Vanguard's index fund model passively owns the economy, concentrating voting power. While not families in the old sense, Their leaders and beneficiary institutions, pensions, endowments tied to elite continue the concentration. Modern elites include Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, tech crossover like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, but the old networks persist through Davos, Bilderberg, CFR, and family offices. Influence flows via campaign donations, think tanks, and media. The Panama Papers and Paradise Papers revealed offshore webs preserving dynastic wealth. Inequality metrics show the top 1% holding disproportionate shares, echoing Gilded Age peaks. Untold angles include personal scandals, Rockefeller's father as a bigamist and con man, Morgan's physical deformities and art hoarding, Vanderbilt family, curses of addiction and tragedy. Broader untold stories involve financing both sides of conflicts, lobbying for favorable laws, and shaping education and medicine to align with interests Rockefeller Foundation's role in modern medicine. For instance, the financial elite's story is America's: ambition driving progress, power breeding excess. They built railroads, lit cities, cured diseases, yet extracted human and environmental costs. In an era of populism and crypto challenges to fiat, their dominance faces scrutiny. Will new technologies democratize finance or entrench new elites? The game continues, but knowing the players equips us to navigate it. As you watch markets swing or debate policy, remember, behind the charts are legacies of men who gambled nations and won empires. The untold story isn't just past, it's how wealth begets power that shapes your tomorrow. Subscribe, like, comment your thoughts on whether these titans were heroes or villains. The financial elite endure because we let the system they designed persist. Understanding it is the first step to rewriting the rules